Hello, everybody, and good morning. Happy Monday. Welcome back from spring break. I hope you're as excited as I am to pick up where we left off in Harry Potter. I did start to read just because sometimes before I read this out loud, I try to skim a couple pages just to get an idea of what is going to be happening in the story, so I have less goof-ups on, some of the voices and stuff. But this part of the story gets a little bit creepy, so if you're listening or watching with younger siblings, or you know that you have a tendency to get a little extra spooked about this stuff, just kind of be warned, we're listening to a fantasy story, right? And some spooky things are going to start happening, so very Halloween. Lots of Halloween vibes. Okay. We're going to pick up where we left off, which was at Nearly Headless Nick's death day party, and Sir Patrick had just come into the party, and he was the person who did not let Nearly Headless Nick join the Headless Huntsman. Okay, so there's your quick recap. And it looks like, I'm trying to remember exactly what paragraph we left off on, so I'm just going to maybe reread some of it. "If I could have everyone's attention, it's time for my speech," said Nearly Headless Nick loudly, striding towards the podium and climbing into an icy blue spotlight. "My late lamented lords, ladies, and gentlemen, it is my great sorrow." But no one heard much more. Sir Patrick and the rest of the Headless Hunt had just started a game of head hockey, and the crowd were turning to watch. Nearly Headless Nick tried vainly to recapture his audience, but gave up as Sir Patrick's head went sailing past him to loud cheers. Harry was very cold by now, not to mention hungry. "I can't stand much more of this," Ron muttered, his teeth chattering, and the orchestra As the orchestra ground back into action and the ghost swept back onto the dance floor. "Let's go," Harry agreed. They backed towards the door, nodding and beaming at anyone who looked at them, and a minute later they were hurrying back up the passageway full of black candles. "Pudding might not be finished yet," said Ron, hopefully, leading the way towards the steps to the entrance hall. And then Harry heard it. "Rip, tear, kill." It was the same voice. The same cold, murderous voice that he had heard in Lockhart's office. He stumbled to a halt, clutching at the stone wall, listening with all his might, looking around, squinting up and down at the dimly lit passageway. "Harry, what are you—" "It's that voice again! Shut up a minute!" "So hungry for so long." "Listen!" said Harry urgently, and Ron and Hermione froze, watching him. "Kill! Time to kill!" The voice was growing fainter. Harry was sure it was moving away, moving upwards. A mixture of fear and excitement gripped him as he stared at the dark ceiling. How could it be moving upwards? Was it a phantom? To whom stone ceilings didn't matter? "This way!" he shouted, and he began to run up the stairs into the entrance hall. It was no good hoping to hear anything there. The babble of the talk from the Halloween feast was echoing out of the great hall. Harry sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Harry, what are we—" "Shh!" Harry strained his ears. Distantly, from the floor above and growing fainter still, he heard the voice. "I smell blood. I smell blood." His stomach lurched. "It's going to kill someone!" he shouted, and ignoring Ron and Hermione's bewildered faces, he ran up the next flight of steps, 3 at a time, trying to listen over his pounding footsteps. Harry hurtled around the whole of the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting behind him, not stopping until they turned a corner to the last deserted package. "Harry, what was that all about?" said Ron, wiping sweat off his face. "I couldn't hear anything." But Hermione gave a sudden gasp, pointing down the corridor. "Look!" Something was shining on the wall ahead. Something was shining on the wall ahead. They approached, slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high words had been daubed on the wall between two windows, shimmering in the light cast by flaming torches. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. "What's that thing hanging underneath?" said Ron, with a slight quiver in his voice. As they edged nearer, Harry almost slipped over. There was a large puddle of water on the floor. Ron and Hermione grabbed him, and they inched towards the message, eyes fixed on a dark shadow beneath it. All three of them realized what it was at once, and leapt backwards with a splash. Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, was hanging by her tail from the torch bracket. She was stiff as a board, and her eyes were wide and staring. For a few seconds, they didn't move. Then Ron said, "Let's get out of here." "Shouldn't we try and help?" Harry began awkwardly. "Trust me," said Ron, "we don't want to be found here." But it was too late. A rumble, as though of distant thunder, told them that the feast had just ended. From either end of the corridor where they stood came the sound of hundreds of feet climbing the stairs, and the loud, happy talk of well-fed people. The next moment, students were crashing into the passage from both ends. The chatter, the bustle, the noise died suddenly as the people in front spotted the hanging cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood alone in the middle of the corridor as silence fell among the mass of students, pressing forward to the grisly sight. Then someone shouted through the quiet, "Enemies of the air, beware! You'll be next, mudbloods!" It was Draco Malfoy. He had pushed to the front of the crowd, his cold eyes alive, his usually bloodless face flushed, as he grinned at the sight of the hanging, immobile cat. Chapter 9. The Writing on the Wall. Let's see if I can see this picture. "What's going on here? What's going on?" Attracted no doubt by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came shuddering his way through the crowd. Then he saw Mrs. Norris, and fell back, clutching his face in horror. "My cat! My cat! What has happened to Mrs. Norris?" he shrieked. And his popping eyes fell on Harry. "You!" he screeched. You've murdered my cat! You've killed her! I'll kill you! Argus! Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In seconds he had swept past Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and detached Mrs. Norris from the torch bracket. "Come with me, Norris," he said to Filch. "You too, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger." Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is nearest, Headmaster. Just upstairs. Please feel free to—" "Thank you, Gilderoy," said Dumbledore. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart, looking excited and important, hurried after Dumbledore. So did Professors McGonagall and Snape. And that is where we have to end our reading for today. Right at a good cliffhanger. Welcome back. All right, I will see y'all tomorrow on Tuesday, and I can't wait to see you all live on Zoom on Wednesday. Bye.